she calls him like, welcome, my son. I lost my mind.
I knew you were going to say that.
I know.
I was like, oh my goodness, Marty was right.
We just did part 2 of Murtagh.
We finished the book.
We finally finished the book. And I will say, I finished that book like minutes before walking into our studio.
I finished it about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. But
we only get a week. And I had to go back like 5 chapters because I missed a whole lot of important stuff.
Oh, I was going to ask you about this. So last episode, if you missed it, you'll have to go back and see it. There are some parts that I thought that Jaden should have read already.
Which I technically did, I listened to. I just didn't take in anything.
Well, it was hilarious. We get home and I get this text message from Jaden. She's like, dude, I had to skip back like 5 chapters because I zoned out so long.
It was pretty bad. I would skip back a chapter and be like, nope, no idea what's going on.
So that's how that first part went, right? You just so good that you zoned out, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah. If you saw the previous reaction video, you know kind of how we felt about it. It was a very strong reaction. I'll link the video somewhere if you haven't seen it. But this is your fair warning. We're, a couple of seconds into the video now that there will be plenty of spoilers for the second half of Murtagh in this episode. We will have a book review coming out probably in the next few days that's going to be spoiler-free, but this is definitely going to have spoilers. So if you read the book and you want to have a fun reaction to it with us, let's do it.
Yep, and we'll give our final review of the book in that as well. So
yeah, that's true.
It'll be great. Okay, so I want to start off. Something that I'd almost mentioned in the last episode was the Tangle Box and the whole idea of him falling into that scene. That's where I feel like the book started to turn around and get a little bit more interesting. Okay. I thought the whole idea of a Tangle Box was super cool, like fascinating. Like he falls into
it's an interesting trap.
Yeah, meant to like trap magicians specifically so they can't speak or even think because they're so distracted by so many things, right?
Yeah. But he got rescued.
He did.
Which is the first time we feel like Thorn was introduced to the book.
Yeah, Thorn did anything in the book.
Useful in any way.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
Yeah.
I think that their relationship is definitely a theme that I think is interesting throughout the entire second half. Mm-hmm. Because, and this is something I realized, so we've been listening to it for the majority of it. Did you read any of it or did you listen to the whole thing?
I listened to the whole thing except for the very last part where I was trying to listen to it as fast of a speed as possible in order to get over here.
Okay.
And so I read at the same time as listening. So that's as close as Actually, I did read a few pages when I was going to bed at night and didn't feel like listening.
There you go.
Okay. So I got some.
Yeah. Well, I tried to read a little bit, and I usually read a lot less than you.
Yeah.
As far as like I listened to the vast majority of it.
Yeah.
But this time, I think partially because I felt bad about missing so much content, I tried to read a little bit of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that was really interesting to me, very specifically for the Thorn elements of it as a character. Because the way I read his text is so much more like thoughtful, sarcastic, and fun than like the weird monotone dragon voice.
He sounds different, doesn't he? Like
oh, absolutely. In my head, it's more of like a powerful but almost like kind of sarcastic voice. Yeah. And I think that's more fun. And I think that's just a better characterization of Thorn. But I will say we ragged a lot on the reader of the audiobook in the last episode. And I honestly think that he has so many voices.
Yes.
I think this most recent episode showed that. Like he has like tons of different voices that he pulls out. I just think he picked the wrong one for the dragons.
Yeah, no, I do agree. He's not not a bad reader. And as I was thinking through it too, it's not a bad take on what a dragon probably sounds like. But the dragon, like, he's speaking to you through your mind.
It's
like,
the intonation that gets me. It's the fact that it sounds almost monotone, that he doesn't really have a character.
Yeah,
he doesn't have like a way of just, I guess, intoning his speech to make it sound more personable or funnier or like wittier.
True. That's a really good way of putting it. And it's funny, the other thing that you said with the dragon in the last episode was that he could have been just as good as riding a horse the whole time. And then almost right on cue, the very next part that I read is like he's flying away and on not his horse, but on the dragon, they're making comments about like, I'm so happy that you're not on that stupid horse anymore. Yeah. Now you're riding me. And I'm like, it's perfect. That's what Jaden wanted.
After the hunt?
Yeah. It was after they got...
When was he on the horse the first time?
It's like throughout the whole book until they get to the part where they escape the city.
Okay, yeah. So he rides the dragon. The dragon helps him. The dragon's useful, except he's morbidly claustrophobic.
You know what? Maybe he doesn't ride a horse, and I'm just remembering it
He
wrong.
does. No, he does ride a horse.
Well, he doesn't hunt, but that's later. And he doesn't do it in the beginning of the book.
That's true. He makes all kinds of comments about
I'm starting to get my thoughts confused with what you said, that you felt like they were doing the whole
I
first part of the book.
feel like he was basically riding a horse because it was just transporting him from city to city. But I think, like I was saying, it all comes down to the dragon is like deathly claustrophobic.
Oh, yeah.
Can't handle it. And I can understand like that. You know, he was in prison, tortured for a very long time. There's a lot of dark elements to the second half of like torture and intensity. Maybe a little too intense, but you know, that's the way it's written. I think that's the way it's intended.
Did you not like the intensity?
I liked the intensity. I will say right off the bat that it was much better than the first half.
Oh yeah,
like night and day different, I think.
Oh yeah, I will say that it at least doubled the rating, my final rating for this book.
What was it going to be?
I can't tell you until we get to our next video.
Oh, the review video. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see that one come out in a couple of days. It'll be good.
Yeah, it'll be great. But yeah, it really made a big turnaround for me in this book. I felt like it, maybe the whole quest thing where she said, you got to do this, this, and this, just laid out the whole, like, what's going to happen in the story. Where the second half, you had really no idea what was coming.
It was completely different in that I felt like the style of writing the plot, in the sense that, like you said, there's so much structure to the beginning. It's like go from city to city. You need information from this person. You got to go get a scale. And it's just like, it felt very monotonous. But then the second half was a little bit more like, I have no idea what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
Like, where is she getting this power from? What's happening? Why is he, can't he escape?
Is it Bashal?
Yep.
Bashal. Okay. Let me tell you here, when we made some predictions last episode on what was going to happen next, when he first gets to the city, Nalgorgoth, yep, that's what it is, and she says, like, she calls him, like, welcome, my son. I lost my mind.
I knew you were going to say that.
I know.
I was like, oh my goodness, Marty was right.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I'm a genius. And she was going, I almost couldn't hold myself back from texting Jaden right then. I'm like, I knew it. I would nail this.
Pause the book.
Yeah. And then I was like, I can't do this because I got to wait for the podcast to give the actual reaction.
Yep.
And then a few pages later, turns out it's not actually his mom. Which would have been way cooler. But
I did love the fact that there were some comments on our predictions in the last video, and we always love the comments. They're the best part of this podcast.
Yeah.
But they're like, it can't possibly be his mom because his mom has died.
I know, but I'm like,
and you're like, that's what I mean. It's like the twist.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of
this
funny.
happens in movies and books all the time. They're like, oh,
they died.
So and so died.
Yeah, but no one saw them die.
In a movie, the general rule of thumb is, movie and TV show, you never trust that someone's died unless you see their dead body on the ground.
And even then, there needs to be some sort of funeral event.
Yes, exactly. Unless it's the Blacklist. That happens like a million times in that show. I swear.
A lot of people die in the Blacklist.
Oh my goodness.
So, I think one of the things, this is quite the 180 here from Blacklist. One of the things that I thought changed significantly in the second half that made me like it a lot better is, well, improved it, but I still feel like is lacking, was the relationship between Thorn and Murtagh, in the sense that they collaborated a lot more. Thorn was more involved as a dragon a lot more. I still feel like Thorn has no input into the direction of the story at all. No. In the sense that he just goes along, like he has no control. He just goes along with whatever Murtagh says, and I just don't feel like that makes it like, they make it seem like a dragon and rider are a partnership. And like they work together to solve these problems and do these things, but I feel like sometimes Murtagh gets to draw from the strength of Thorn and sometimes not. Especially when it would be really convenient for him to have the strength of a dragon. He just doesn't think of that, or it just doesn't work.
Well, there was a specific scene at the end of the book where he's like casting a thought off to Thorn, and saying like, he's like, I can't communicate directly to you, but like Thorn's like, you know what, whatever, man, whatever you do, like I'm always happy with it because I trust you. Like that's the feeling I got. I'm like, come on.
It's the same throughout the whole book. Basically, Thorn just says, I don't agree with this, and Murtagh's like, we're doing it anyway, and he's like, okay.
Seriously,
that's just how it goes. That's how it felt like it went, at least. But I feel like for a dragon, it was much of a letdown for me.
I agree. So let's get into Nalgorgoth a bit. Okay. And so what did you think
the cult?
The cult. Like what did you think about the whole thing, like the people, the feeling around the city. And
I thought it was definitely eerie, but I
Yeah.
think as a part of the book, it was a lot more entertaining because you turn the page to figure out what happens next,
Yep.
right? You don't just turn the page to check boxes, to like go through like, oh, I know what's going to happen, just got to get through it. But you're turning the page, I feel like, a lot more in this part because you're like, so many questions need to be answered and I don't know what's going on. And there are things that I'm not aware of. I think that was cool.
yeah.
There were pockets of it that I didn't like or were a little too long, but
There were parts in the second part where as opposed to the first part, it felt like a chore getting through.
Yep.
Second part, I was actually looking forward to like turning the pages.
yeah. And then that's a distinct feeling that you have to get inside of a book for
Yep.
me. Or it's like, what am I reading this book for? Like, I'm not taking a test on, not in school anymore.
Yeah.
If I'm not enjoying this book, why am I wasting my time reading it? There are so many other books to read. So I'm glad that I had that in the second part. Otherwise, I'm not sure if I would have been able to finish it.
Oh, I know. And I think I even messaged you about that. I'm like, don't worry, Jaden. I think the second half may actually give us the turnaround we were hoping for.
Yeah. Oh,
so-
man. What is interesting to me about the book overall, I guess this is mostly specifically to the second half, but how varied the reactions were across the world, the spectrum of people. I took a quick gander at Goodreads,
Oh, yeah. So you're talking about like the real
Yeah,
world, like
just
not
real
the
world.
world of Alegaesia.
not Alegaesia. Yeah, people, real people. But that read the book, that had read Eragon in the past and like rated it on Goodreads.
Yeah.
And there's a huge array of opinions about how this went.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated to hear. Like, people,
Well, a lot
do
of
people love it or
I
hate
would
it
say
or
the
both?
majority of reviews were very short 5-star reviews. The
Interesting.
majority. That's why it has like a 4.75 or something.
Is it short 5-star reviews like they didn't read the book?
No,
or
they're-
like they
I'll give you one more guess as to what the reviews talked about.
I have no guesses. I don't.
Gotta make it. Okay. But it's essentially them just saying, I'm so glad to be back in Alegaesia.
Oh shoot!
I knew you would have
that is-
guessed that.
I know I would have guessed that.
It's too late. We're
Just
recording
can't-
this podcast
It's
too late.
camera brain, man. You can't remember anything.
But yeah,
It's
so
in front of you.
essentially there's a lot of people being like, oh, I love this. 12 years later, I'm so excited. It was the best book I've ever read. Like, there were a lot of people that gave some serious praise to this book.
Wow.
And then there were a lot of others, particularly the longer reviews, that were more like, it felt lazy. It felt like the plot was a little bit more, just so basic that it was painful.
Yeah.
A lot of people mentioned they liked the second half better and that the
Oh,
first
cool.
half could have been trimmed significantly. But a lot of people did also say that the second half could have been so much shorter. A lot of people said the book could have been 200 pages shorter.
You know
in
what?
general.
That's the general feeling that I got from this book.
It's too long?
I kind of feel like he put the first half in there because he felt like the book needed to be longer. It had really nothing to do with the second half.
That's a good point.
And I feel like he had the idea, this would be my guess, is that he came up with the idea for the second half and is like, this is too short of a book and I need to have more background, and threw in the first half. That is my theory.
I'm not surprised because the only pivotal event that happened in the first part is that he learned who Bashel was.
Yep. And he got some
That's-
items that he could use.
Not even really that.
Well, he used the little gem thing that he found.
Yeah, he used the gem thing that he found, but I mean, like, the whole first half didn't need to happen for him.
Oh, it didn't. No, yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think he just like, you know what? Let's expand the world and go on some fun quests. And
Also,
stuff,
let's talk about the gem for a second. You're telling me Bashal, who is like this massively powerful mental sorceress lady, who can touch other people's minds, just like Murtagh can touch other people's minds, and because he can touch other people's minds, he can recognize sources of power.
Yeah.
You don't think she would have like looked him over and given one of those little mental probes and said, there's a lot of stored energy in the hem of his coat?
I know, dude.
How could she possibly not have noticed that?
I know.
That is crazy to me.
It was pretty convenient, I would say.
It was way too convenient. Way too convenient. I
Yeah.
actually learned a term as I was reading these
tell
Goodreads
me.
reviews. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Okay,
But
go
it's
for it.
spelled a little bit like Deus Ex Machina or Machina or something like that.
Oh,
Or Deus Ex Machina.
yeah.
Something like that. And I am so sorry. I tried my best.
You know what? He's better pronouncing things than me, so,
So
I'll
essentially,
take it.
what it means is when a massively complicated plot is just wrapped up like unreasonably quickly.
Oh, interesting.
And then I feel like that happens a lot in TV shows when they like get canceled and stuff. Where they like build up this massive thing. And even I think with the first 4 books where you're talking about Galbatorix and his power and you're like all this massive intensity and then just ends. Yeah. Like it's just over. Like, oh, they resolved it, you know?
Yeah, they figured it out.
That kind of happened here where they're like all this massive power that she had and she could wield all kind of ends in like a sword fight, basically. And I just, as I'm remembering these things, the final battle with Bashel, when he's like, I can't believe she didn't follow the rules of magic. Like, what is wrong with you? You honestly were like, wow, she didn't duel me like as you're supposed to as magicians. Like, who made these rules? You're trying to kill each other. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
What do they say? All is fair in love and war. Like,
it blew my mind. He's like, oh, and she used magic while we were trying to best each other's minds when normally you wait for one. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Like, who follows these rules?
Nobody follows these rules.
At least ridiculous. The bad guys. And like, if you're a good guy and not expecting the bad guy to do something crazy like that, you're not a very.
It's not even that crazy. It's like if you're trying to take over someone's mind completely, you kind of want to throw them off a little
Distract
bit. That seems like a pretty standard decision to make. I was like, I can't believe he's shocked. I feel like a lot of the decisions that he made across the whole story, I was just like, is it the same character that went through all of this stuff in the first 4 books? Because he just feels he makes all kinds of mistakes.
So I want to talk about some of these thoughts that he has throughout the book. So there's a lot of things that he seems to flip out over that like seem like not as big of a deal as they have been made out to be. So for example, he's at the dinner and he's confronting the witch for the first time, Bashel, and she has literally done nothing to him. And he has no evidence that she's evil except that the place smells bad and he's got a weird feeling about it and everything. Yeah. And he just confronts her and says like, you know what? Like, you're evil and I'm going to do all these things. Like, I need to talk to you about right now, all these things. And why couldn't he just wait until the morning? Like he had agreed. He's like, you know what? I can wait until after we have one more night of a dream and whatever. Then he gets to that dinner. He's like, nope, never mind. Like, I'm done with this. He even said
they weren't going to sleep. Like, they were just going to like experience and see what happened and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But
it just kind of felt like super erratic.
Yeah, like if you're going to do something so intense and you're literally by yourself in this whole cult of people who are armed and all this stuff, like why would you not at least write a note to someone you know? Or do the Weircats send some sort of message?
The Weircats never came back, right? For like the trust that he gained with them.
The whole book. They couldn't help at all. Like the whole point was that anytime you need us, you can call the Weircats and we'll help you. He needed you.
Yeah.
Nothing.
No one was there.
I feel like he could have, they didn't have much information about Bashal and Gorgroth or anything like that. He could have just sent a message somehow. Given that information,
something weird is going on here. Yeah, well, and I was kind of wondering if a Weircat would come visit and like see him in the cell, and that's how he would escape.
Like, something like that. He totally disappeared from the book, like you said. It could be 2 different books. They just wrote the first part afterward.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting that you mentioned the people there, and like why, like did he not work with anyone there, whatever. So it also kind of drove me crazy that he kept on saying, he's like, you know what? The people are going to rise up with me against the witch and everything. I'm like, dude, have you not seen them this whole time? Like, they're blindly obsessed in a cult. Like, they have given you no reason to think that they would be with you at all.
You also just got there.
Yeah.
There's no reason you can't spend a little bit of time. Like, there were 150 pages in the torture scenes. Like, we could have taken 50 of those pages out and made them into, like, maybe he stayed for a little bit longer and he's like, oh, actually, I'm going to leave just to test to see if you could leave. Yeah. Like, he did none of that stuff.
Understand the people more. And
do a little bit of research, a little bit of, what do they call it, espionage a little? I don't know.
Oh, totally. And then he goes so far as, like, he thinks the people are probably good and they'll rise up with him. Then I'm going to sneak out in the middle of the night and then kill these soldiers in innocent blood. Yeah. I'm just like, I don't know if you were as shocked as I was.
I was blown away. Just totally straight up killed him. Yeah, and he keeps talking the whole book about like not wanting to kill people, not wanting to spill blood, and how he's trying to atone for his sins. And he's like, all these 7 guards that are just, doing their job. Let's kill those guys.
Let's suffocate them just because they want to keep me from leaving my room.
I guess we don't technically know if all of them died.
Well, he says that they were like blue and their
maybe
veins
he
were
stopped the spell and then they were just passed out. We don't know, but it was still brutal.
It was super brutal. And again, before he has any evidence that anything actually shady is going on, besides finding Morzan's, or no, it wasn't Morzan's. Someone's.
Oh, you're gonna get me on that name. I have no idea.
I don't know the name, but it's someone from the Forsworns.
Yep.
So
that time period, yeah, it was one of the writers.
So, anyways, I thought that was crazy. Then on top of that,
so the decision making was poor from Murtagh's perspective.
Then, how big is Thorn?
Oh man, I have no idea.
Can you imagine a dragon sneaking around a village and like not being able to be seen? The whole time I'm like laughing out loud. He's like, he was a sneaky dragon with his tail.
Well, okay, like, I tried to do this halfway through the book, and I think we think very similar sometimes. Halfway through, I was like, I need to know, like, what is the actual scale of this dragon? Because what we do know, there was a massive boar hunt, right?
Yeah.
That big boar that almost killed Murtagh.
Yeah.
Thorn picks it up with one talon and flies away.
Yeah.
Okay. So it can't be bigger than Thorn. He has to be so much bigger that he can just pick it up and fly
So
away.
I imagine that boar was probably half the size of a bear, or maybe the size of a bear.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe something
so that
crazy.
means the dragon's
one
four
hand
times,
is like
4 or 5 times the size of a bear, which is huge.
at least, if not like 10. If
So we're
it's just
talking like the size of a building.
Yep.
Okay, and then they also say the buildings were too close together for him to walk down the street. So clearly this is a huge dragon.
Yeah.
Right? But then
He's
the
a very
tunnels,
sneaky dragon, though.
the tunnels in the end, he's like, oh, just fold in your wings. Go straight through the tunnel. You're the size of a building.
I will say, though, it does mention the first time he goes to the tunnels that the tunnels were big enough that Thorn could fit through.
If he folded his wings in. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. We'll leave the tunnels off of it.
I don't know.
But I still feel like it just varies so much that makes me confused.
Oh, yeah. Well, it does. And I don't know. I guess I was just, like I said, I was just completely blown away by a sneaky dragon. I'm like, it just doesn't make sense to me. A building sneaking around the village.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
I don't know. Blew me away. So those are my initial thoughts on it.
But they were in Nalgorgroth for a really long time.
Yep. Very long torture scenes that kind of went on and on.
And was it okay? I read their whole book and I listened to the very end, and I still have no idea. Why?
Wait, you read and then listened, or did you?
No, I'm saying I didn't zone out.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's probably what you're going to say first.
No.
I'm like, was this like entity at the end not just a volcano? Was I missing something?
Well, okay,
It sure seemed the entire last hour of the book like, dude, it's a volcano. It's just a volcano, man. It's blowing silt and sulfur at you, and there's moving stuff downside that's bright and fiery. It's lava, and it's sulfur. It's a volcano.
Well, he sensed the presence down there, though.
Yeah,
you got that.
I do remember the presence. I'm just saying,
But
like the whole confusion about this thing and like what's going on.
I was convinced that we were going to see a black wingless dragon the entire time, like his dream.
I totally thought. I was convinced. I was like, I got it. I figured it out. Thorn was going to emerge covered in sulfur and soot, and he was all crunched in, so he was going to come out with the outwinged. People were going to think wingless dragon. Everyone's going to run around. The prophecy is fulfilled. Nothing.
That'd be a great way to finish that.
That's what I thought. Because he's like, he would have his wings tucked in when he pops out of the tunnel, and he'd be black from the soot that's clearly been spewing everywhere.
Yeah.
And nothing.
I
feel
know.
like it was all set up for that.
I was waiting for all of this to like tie together with him seeing the future in his dreams too. Like he would come out and with Thorn, and he's attacking the whole village and everything, and then him just specifically remember like, this is exactly what my dream was, and she interpreted it wrong. It was me taking her out and her people. But
that would be cool.
Yeah, I feel like another type thing.
Normally a book that I feel like continues strong into like a new series or a new like book in the series is where there's one strong thread that leaves off, right? You're like, oh, cliffhanger, that one thread. I feel like Murtagh is just a bunch of loose ends where you're just like, well, okay, there's just loose ends dropped everywhere.
Okay, so I did read the acknowledgments at the end and his end note.
Okay.
And this is what I thought was really fascinating. So he said Murtagh is a book that he doesn't consider to be book 5 of like the Eragon series.
Okay.
He considers it to be a book that there will...
And he said that publicly, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, there will be more books around this and after this. So
that's what I'm
separately.
saying.
So there'll be around it and after. He's like, but he also does plan on writing a book 5 for the Eragon series.
Yep.
And this is not book 5.
I agree.
Which I didn't know that. Well, I thought that was fascinating. So I wonder if like all the loose ends is more something that will be like, he's like, this is just a side story. This is a story where I just wanted to show you what Murtagh was doing at the time. And you're going to have all these loose ends that we can explore later in the actual series. That was my theory. He also did say that book 5 of Eragon will take place after this Murtagh book. it will not take place like where it left off or whatever. So
Interesting.
yeah, those are all super fascinating thoughts. But I want to hear what you had to say.
I still just think that there are too many small loose ends.
Oh, I don't disagree with that.
with a lot of loose ends. Fine, like we'll wrap it up somewhere in the future, and like there's interesting stories we can pull on. But I feel like they're just loose ends that just don't mean anything. They're just loose ends to be loose ends.
But what did you think about the finish of this book with Naswada being introduced again, which I totally saw coming, and I saw the title of this chapter before I finished the book.
It's one of those.
And it was one of those, and it said reunion. I had actually guessed that we'd see Eragon in this. And actually,
I was expecting that at the end.
Yes, and actually that was going to be one of my predictions.
Almost
in the
like
first
a brotherly,
Yeah, and I forgot to mention it. Without even seeing the chapter title, I'm like, Eragon's going to appear in this book at some point.
I totally thought that was going to be like a moment of reunion. I mean, like the two brothers being like, okay, we are like the dragon riders of the land. Galbatorix is gone. How do we move forward? Kind of a thing. And there's nothing.
Yep.
You mentioned Naswada and her part.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that really bugged me. And it brought back all of those frustrating emotions from Eragon and Arya. Just be like, it just does not feel normal. I don't know what it is about this.
He's repairing a wrong again from his previous books. He had realized that he should have had Eragon and Arya end up together. He's like, I'm not screwing this up again. Murtagh is ending up with Naswada. That is what's happened at the end of this book.
The way he writes romance is so odd to me. Like, it felt so weird with Eragon and Arya, I feel like, during the entire books. And then now it's like, all of a sudden he just shows up like bloody and she's like, well, let's get together.
Yeah,
let's be close. I'm like, what is happening?
You can hide in my city. How am I going to hide in your city? I don't know. You should just stay. it
was a little odd. It did give you the impression they're going to stay together, which is kind of nice, Like, nice for him to have a happy ending.
You need those endings. When they allude to them, yes, it's cheesy. Yes, it's predictable. But that's what we're here for.
That's the kind of thing that I'm okay with being predictable.
Yeah.
A lot of times, you don't want it to be predictable. But that's one of those things where, like, you almost need it to wrap up. That's like finishing a melody in a song. Yep. It kind of has to finish.
It's like Harry Potter should have ended up with Hermione. Should have happened.
Let's.
Not sorry for another time, but it's one of those moments. Like
it is one of those moments.
And she messed it up by like, I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to throw you off, and that's not what you throw the twists in the story for. Twists in the story are for the bad guys.
Yeah.
Not for the
exactly.
happy endings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think that was so the reaction to Murtagh, though, from the general populace, kind of like I was reading Goodreads and stuff and seeing what people thought.
Yeah.
I came across a quick short video where Paolini was on a podcast and he was talking about, he's like, it's been wildly successful, like way more than I anticipated. It's been fantastic.
Murtagh has been?
Yep.
So this was after the release he did this interview.
Yeah. And he said it's been massively successful, and he has this other series, I guess, called the Fractalverse. Mm-hmm. Which is his sci-fi series, which I haven't read. Have you?
No, I haven't, but I know of it.
So there's this Fractalverse, and he's like, well, I was going to write a book in the Fractalverse, but since this has been received so well, maybe I'll go ahead and write the next book in the series. So 12 years from now, when we're old and gray...
You think it's going to take him another 12 years?
No, who knows? But there's a chance it will take some serious time.
It takes at least 3 years.
At least 3 years.
Yeah.
So... don't forget to subscribe to see Inheritance Book 5.
It was interesting. He also mentioned that at the end of his book that he came back. He felt like it was the right time to come back to the Eragon books, the Alegaesia. But I feel like he got burnt out of his first books, and that's why he's finally coming back to it. He's like, okay, it felt right this time. I'm not burnt out anymore, and I
hope this is a warm-up then. Because I'll be honest, I was disappointed. Like, for the hype that I was excited for this book, I loved the Inheritance series. I was disappointed. And I know we'll have to talk more about that in our actual review of like the final stuff. But as a reaction to the series, I would say I was pretty disappointed in the plot itself.
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed too. The second half made up a lot for the first half.
It did.
But overall, a bit disappointed with the book. But had some cool redeeming elements.
So like totally nerfing the ancient language.
He
knows like 6 words.
There's like 3 ancient languages out there, actually, not just the Elvish one.
It's the fact that he got a dictionary of terms in the ancient language that served him basically nothing. He learned 1 word.
The word die, which I also feel is overpowered. It's just He kills all the birds just by saying die. I couldn't believe it.
If you go that route and you give him a dictionary of the ancient language, you have to have some sort of opportunity for him to really study it and learn it and practice it and do different things instead of just, he got the dictionary, read the one word. It could have been written on the wall, like in that room. Instead of finding a dictionary, he could have just like read like a couple of words off the wall and remembered one and tested it out on a mouse and killed it accidentally. Like, I don't know, anything else. But it just feels like giving him a dictionary just so that he conveniently would have the one word he need to kill like 1,000 birds at the end. Felt weird. Like, what kind of a plot connection is that? I don't know.
It's hard.
It is hard. I imagine it's very difficult to write these books and to tie everything together and feel like you've got the weight of an entire audience of people. But that's why he's wealthy. Is because he has all these people who
that's
are
why
waiting
they're
for
making
him.
Disney movies over this.
Yep.
So I actually...
Well, they tried that.
Well,
they're trying it again.
Yeah. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why he's doing this again is because he's trying to build out that universe.
He's on like a worldwide tour right now.
Really?
For Murtagh. Yeah.
Where's he at now?
I don't know, but I saw in one of the shorts he was like flying to the UK in like
on a dragon
first class. Basically,
I know.
It's the same experience.
Wow.
No, it was. It seems to be. It must be huge. The book must be huge. So I don't know if I was expecting it to be that massive on release, but it seems like it's doing really well.
Yeah. Well, it's been fun to see it. I mean, okay, when I opened this book for the first time, I read it on Kindle when I was reading like the words and everything. And this actually, I almost like this better than the actual like book cover. Like this is actually really pretty. Like this is how this.
So you don't like the dust cover as much?
The dust cover is fine, but this just makes it look legit. Like I'm just a big fan.
Yeah, I like the insides. The inside covers are really cool.
It's cool, and there's some pictures here and there.
I did see the pictures because they also come in the Audible. There's a PDF accompanying the Audible. You can see the pictures.
It said that at the beginning, and I forgot. Well, speaking
you
of
missed
Audible,
out.
is like a couple fun things about Audible is one, I have a tradition that I have to finish an Audible book is not finished until you get to the part and says it's like this.
Audible hopes you enjoyed this.
Yes, exactly. So got there today.
Way to go.
But it was not without like stress to get there. So I had way too much to finish before I got here tonight. What is the fastest you've ever listened to a book on Audible? What speed?
I've tried it at 2x and sometimes is pushing it.
Yep.
I have listened to it I usually listen at 1.7. That's like my go-to.
Yep. My speed typically to enjoy a book is 1.5.
Okay. Yeah.
I like that. And if I can do 1.2, I really like that. But when I need to catch up, I hit 1.7, sometimes 2. Today, I was listening to it on 3 speed.
You can't even understand it at 3x speed.
I actually could. I was really impressed with myself.
You're going to have to be laser focused.
Oh, dude. You'll
miss entire paragraphs while you get distracted.
Many times I had to skip back. But I got through 4 hours of listening in like an hour and a half. I blew through the whole torture scenes all the way to the end.
So that's why you didn't think they were excessively long.
Well, and then it felt long even during the 3 times speed.
It felt very long to me.
It was crazy though, because once I got to the end, I was doing chores around the house, like listening to it, because I'm like, I don't want to just stare at a blank wall, and I can't read 3 times speed. Like that's ridiculous.
You have to be doing something mindless, because like I'll try to listen while I'm working, and I'm like, I gotta go back the whole way because I have no idea what
it's not gonna happen. Yeah, sometimes even when I'll play like a Switch golf while doing it. Takes way too much focus when it comes close.
Nice.
But no, once the end though, the past hour, I was actually reading with it as I was doing the 3 times speed, and it helped a ton to get through it. But I was actually surprised at how well I could still enjoy the book at 3 times speed.
Does it feel like you're a super reader as you're cruising through lines?
But it's funny because sometimes you hang on words like you'll read something and like you have to like read it again.
And your mind
won't, but the audio is still going and you're like, oh shoot, like I lost my spot.
Gotta catch back up again.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you do
3x, that's nuts.
It was absolutely nuts. But it actually really worked with this book. Like I was impressed. It's not something I enjoy and not something I want to do in the future.
We did it for you guys.
We really did. It was just to be here tonight and do this for y'all.
We had to get this out, and we said we would get part 2 out, and now we gotta pick another book.
I know, right? I'm thinking we'll probably go to Sunlit Man next, so we'll see. We're making the decision, though.
I don't know. We'll see. Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll have to...
Up in the air still.
You'll see next week, I guess, which book we went to next.
We will have read a book by then. So.
At least part of a book.
Yeah.
We often do these in multi-part series because it gives us a little bit more opportunity to talk about the things we liked, things we didn't like, do a little bit of a reaction, so we can't do a whole book in 1 week.
Yeah, it depends on how long the book is, right? We don't want to be reading these books at 3 times speed if we can avoid it. So yeah.
Nobody enjoys that.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fun. We definitely enjoyed Murtagh Part 2 a heck of a lot more than Murtagh Part 1.
Hope you guys enjoyed the book as well. If you read it, if you haven't,
we basically spoiled the whole thing for you. So at this point, I don't know if you need to. I guess it's your call.
You can read it if you want. I'm
send
still
me a
trying
note.
to decide.
I could probably send you mine to borrow if you want to skim through it. It's not a huge deal. But anyway, if you liked the video or if you enjoyed listening to the bit of banter we have, leave a comment with your thoughts on Murtagh, what you thought, liked about it, what you didn't like about it. And don't forget to like this video because it does make a huge difference for the channel.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if I'd recommend it yet. Get to our next video where we review it and you can go from there. But let us know in your comments if you'd recommend this book to people who love the original series. But that's it. I think that's the review.
See you in the next one.